I think my fiancé's cousin's child is mine. Hello, Reddit Eyes Plus here. I've always been a player, living my life with no strings attached. Relationships were something other people did, but not me. That all changed 3 years ago when I met Sarah, my first serious girlfriend since middle school. She saw right through my facade, the womanizer I had become, and made me work hard to win her over. It took nearly a year of persistence before she agreed to a date, and now, we're engaged and planning our future together. These past 3 years have been the happiest of my life. But last weekend, everything nearly fell apart. Sarah's cousin Lauren and her family were visiting, and we were all supposed to meet at her parents' place for dinner. I hadn't met Lauren before, as I always seemed to be busy whenever she visited. The moment I laid eyes on her, she stared at me with a look I couldn't quite place. There was something unsettlingly familiar about her. As the introductions were made, I felt her eyes lingering on me, and then her little boy was brought into the room. He's 5 years old with features that looked eerily familiar, like I was looking at a younger version of myself. That's when it hit me. 6 years ago, I had a one-night stand with a woman I met at a bar, a woman who looked a lot like Lauren. I distinctly remember convincing her not to use protection because I had recently had a clean bill of health. As the evening went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that this little boy was mine. Lauren must have realized it too, from the way she kept glancing at me, especially when her son was around. I was a wreck after that dinner. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I was the father of this child and that Sarah's cousin had been the woman I hooked up with that night. Quite possibly while she was visiting Sarah. Sarah could tell something was off and asked if I was okay, but I just told her I wasn't feeling well. The next day, I couldn't bring myself to go to work. I was paralyzed with guilt, fear, and confusion. I had never cheated on Sarah, but the idea that I might have fathered a child with her cousin before we even met? It was tearing me apart. For days, I agonized over what to do. Should I keep this to myself and hope it blows over? But every time I thought about that boy, the anxiety grew. Finally, after reading some advice online, I decided I couldn't keep it from Sarah any longer. I told her everything, how I recognized Lauren, how I was almost certain the child was mine, and how terrified I was of losing her. I broke down sobbing as I poured out my heart, telling her how much she meant to me, and how I couldn't imagine my life without her. To my surprise, Sarah listened quietly, holding my hands the whole time. She was upset that I hadn't told her immediately, but she understood my fear. She reassured me that she wasn't going to leave me because of something that happened before we were together. Then she said something that both comforted and scared me. She would reach out to Lauren herself to get to the bottom of this. The next morning, Sarah began trying to contact Lauren, but was met with silence. When Lauren finally did respond, she asked Sarah to, please just let it go. That only confirmed my suspicions. Lauren even declined our wedding invitation, which hurt Sarah, but I was relieved. I was ready to put this nightmare behind us and move on. A few days before Christmas, Lauren FaceTimed Sarah and finally told her the truth. During a rough patch in her marriage, she had a brief separation from her husband. It was during this separation that she met me, and our one-night stand resulted in her pregnancy. She and her husband reconciled shortly after, and they decided to raise the child as their own. Lauren's confession has caused turmoil in her marriage, and her husband has made it clear that he never wants to see me again. I couldn't help but ask if that meant I could never see the boy, and Lauren apologized, confirming that I wouldn't be part of his life. It was a painful moment, but I respected their decision. Since then, Sarah and I have had some tough conversations. She wanted to know everything about my past, every detail of the reckless life I led before we met. It was difficult, but I answered her questions honestly. We had one particularly bad fight where she admitted she wished she had fallen in love with someone else. That hurt more than I can describe, but the next morning, she apologized, and we've been working through things together. I think we're stronger now, knowing everything is out in the open. The silver lining? I recently got a much better paying job that's fully remote, and Sarah might be able to transition to remote work as well. We've decided that once we're both settled, we'll move abroad, start fresh, and leave all of this behind us. So, that's where we stand. Thanks to everyone who offered advice after my first post. It's been a roller coaster, but I think we're finally heading in the right direction.